that we are going to start question period and that my time is up, but I will come back afterward when I have an opportunity and explore the other aspects of the bill I wanted to bring up. Thank you. I would like to thank the honourable member. He will have 7 minutes remaining for his remarks after question period.
The honourable member for Mission, Matsqui, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to be back in the House to represent my constituents after a busy summer in the riding. I would like to recognize the Lifetime Learning Centre Society's intergenerational walking path project, funded through a New Horizons for Seniors program. The project is a multi-purpose path that enables youth and seniors to team up to create a safe and accessible walking path that provides measurable distances and goal setting for all users. The project will make it possible for local youth and seniors to come together and create a multi-purpose walking path to be enjoyed and shared by the generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to stand in the House today to offer my congratulations to the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara for their excellent service to the youth in my riding. Now, the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara provides programs for over 16,500 children and youth in the Niagara area. Their sole mandate is to provide opportunities for all young people. No child is ever denied access. Their mission statement is to provide a safe, supportive place where children and youth can appreciate new opportunities, overcome barriers, build positive relationships, and develop confidence and skills for life. Now, in addition to their many aquatic sport and recreation programs, the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara also provides over 47,000 meals and snacks, 1,500 weekly rides, and provides almost 5,000 beds annually for at-risk youth. As the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara approach their 5th anniversary in their new facility, I encourage everyone to continue to supporting this worthwhile organization. It is truly a good place to be.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pélan.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I want to share a special thought for my mum today, which would have been her 89th birthday.
Sur une autre note.
On another happy note, this year, one of the largest sports organizations in Laval is celebrating its 50th anniversary. Focusing on excellence and achievement, the Montreuil Sporting Association has trained a number of young people in Laval with remarkable standards of discipline and commitment. Sport enables young people to become more confident and to develop a sense of belonging as well as a team spirit.
Association for the sustained efforts over the past 50 years to keep the children of Laval usefully entertained, healthy and active while shaping the skills that lead them into the successful leaders of tomorrow. Bravo et
Congratulations and long live the Montreuil Sporting Association in Laval.
The honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate the 90th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch No. 7, or as it's most commonly known, the Transcona Legion. The Transcona Legion was officially formed on December 6, 1926, and since its founding has become an integral part of the wider Transcona community. It's been a sponsor of the first Transcona Scouting Group and a Naval Cadet Group. It's played host to the Confidence Rebecca Lodge No. 40 and the Transcona Masonic Lodge. It's a partner of the Transcona Historical Museum and supporter of the Transcona Biz. It's also been a great longtime friend of the Transcona District Pipe Band. By participating in the construction of Transcona Place, it helped to build much-needed housing for seniors in our community. Throughout, the Transcona Legion has been supported by a first-class ladies' auxiliary who have contributed to the success of countless events. It's impossible to imagine Transcona without the presence of its Legion. I'm excited to join with fellow members on Sunday to celebrate 90 years of contribution to our community and to look forward to another 90 years of service.
For West Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to highlight Nova Scotia's exceptional tourism season this past summer. While the final numbers are still being tallied, Nova Scotia is on track to having the best tourism season ever, with over 1 million visitors enjoying what our beautiful province has to offer. The Yarmouth and Acadian Shores region in West Nova saw a 17% increase in tourist traffic this year, in large part due to the new Cat Ferry between Yarmouth and Portland, Maine, and the Fundy Rose between Digby and St. John. Many small business owners and tourism operators in my riding have had a banner year. Supporting these two ferries is vital to the growth and prosperity of Atlantic Canada. They get our products to market and bring visitors to our shores. I look forward to continuing to work with colleagues from all levels of government to ensure the viability and sustainability of these important ferry links. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Mr. Speaker, each of us have at least one of those special people in our ridings that have encouraged us, fostered our ambitions in public service, and invested in us to help us become not just members of Parliament, but the people we are today. This person for me is the person whom I inherited my political interests from, a person who has struggled and overcome incredible adversity in their life. This person was a single mother of 3, living in government housing when she was struck by a car crossing Eccles and Wellington Street in Barrie, and has lived ever since beating the effects of that head injury. She took me to my first political rally in 1999 and has always challenged me to fight for my beliefs, my family, my country, no matter what the odds are, no matter what pressures are mounting against me. Mr. Speaker, I would not break the rules of this great place and recognize anyone who has joined us in the gallery today. But to my mother, Judy Mary Elizabeth Nuttall, I say thank you.
Very deftly handled. The honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, Hamilton's Croatian community is one of Canada's oldest and most active. On Sunday, I attended as the only MP of Croatian heritage the annual Croatian Person of the Year banquet. Michael Lončarić exemplifies the best of Canadian and Croatian values. An outstanding musician on our traditional instrument, the tambura, a teacher to both young and old, a successful businessman, and a proud husband and father. Croatians are an important part of Canada's great diversity, Mr. Speaker, and I am proud to honour Michael Lončarić as Hamilton's Croatian Man of the Year. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Marc-Aurèle-Fortin.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight the success of 2 of our Paralympic athletes. Congratulations to Rosaline Filion and Megan Benfeto, who triumphed in synchronized diving. This duo from my riding of Marc-Aurèle-Fortin and my colleague's riding of Alfred Belland worked hard and brought gold back to Laval.
They have inspired us all, especially young Canadians living with disabilities. Déjà gagnant.
Having already won at the London Games in 2012, despite injury and obstacles, their perseverance enabled them to compete with the best in the world with remarkable success. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of these divers and all of the athletes who represented us in Rio. Once again, congratulations.
The honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, over the last 3 years, I have seen my riding suffer like no other area in Canada. First, it was the price of oil. When it dropped, thousands lost their jobs and many lost their homes. Then the wildfire tore through my community, leading to the largest evacuation Alberta has ever seen. Then there was the flooding. Now, as people of Fort McMurray begin to rebuild their lives and their homes, this government is once again making things worse. This time, the Liberal government is imposing a tariff on drywall that will raise the price by as much as 276%. Mr. Speaker, this tariff will add thousands of dollars to the cost of building a home. All this money will go directly to the government in what can only be described as another tax grab. Residents of Fort McMurray need a repeal of this tariff. This is another example of the Liberals turning its back on the West and profiting from the hardships of the fire-ravaged community of Fort McMurray. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for London North Centre.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me pride to rise and highlight post-secondary education, specifically 2 schools that are located in London, the city I have the honour of representing in this House. Western University, a world-class research-intensive institution. It was an honour to recently announce a $66 million grant, the largest in the university's history. Wow. These funds are for the Brain Scan initiative that concentrates on research in cognitive neuroscience imaging. Fanshawe College is one of Ontario's largest colleges with a promise to educate, engage, empower, and excite. I had the privilege to speak at the grand opening of their Canadian Centre for Product Validation, a facility offering prototyping and testing in one location, a project made possible through FedDev. On behalf of researchers, staff, and students at Western and Fanshawe, I thank the Minister of Science and the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development for their commitment to advancing a research and innovation agenda in Canada. Thank you very much.
For Pickering, Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak on petition E411, sponsored by the honourable member from Pierre Fond Dallaire, my apologies, which calls upon the House to condemn all forms of Islamophobia. I want to thank my colleague for his leadership. In 2008, Masjid Usman opened in Pickering, and it welcomed Muslims from across the GTA for prayers and spiritual reflection since. This petition is so important to me, Mr. Speaker, because over the past several years, a few individuals have vandalized the mosque where many of my constituents worship. I am always amazed, Mr. Speaker, at the response from community leaders and neighbours who condemn these hateful acts and come together to express their support. In difficult times, our country's values are on full display. I urge all of my colleagues to spread awareness on e-petition 411 and to join Canadians from all walks of life in condemning Islamophobia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to pay tribute to a great Canadian nation builder, one that contributes immensely to Canada's economic growth. It is a pipeline. More than 700,000 Canadian jobs rely on the energy sector, but the Liberals are turning their backs on these hard-working Canadians. Liberal inaction is putting this industry in jeopardy. Trans Mountain, Northern Gateway, hearings on Energy East, all delayed. Billions of dollars in investment, gone. While the Liberals delay and dither, more than 100,000 energy workers have lost their jobs. Royal Bank CEO David McKay has come out and said, I must speak out because Canada will not succeed if Alberta does not succeed. And Alberta will not succeed if its energy sector does not succeed. Our energy industry is world-class, and we must focus on how cleanly we can produce it, how safely we can transport it, how wisely we can consume it, and how many jobs it creates. Conservatives understand pipelines are critical to Canada's economy, and Mr. Speaker, as Conservatives, we understand pipelines are an essential nation builder.
Member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in the House to recognize an exceptional member of our community of Calgary Skyview, Mr. Syed Sohrawardy. Mr. Sohrawardy immigrated to Canada from Pakistan in 1995 with his wife, son and daughter. In 1998, he founded the Muslims Against Terrorism in Canada, which has become a global organization for peace. He founded the Islamic Supreme Council of Canada, which has chapters in 6 different provinces. In 2008, he led the multi-faith walk from Halifax to Victoria against domestic violence, animal abuse, elder abuse, and terrorism. He has participated in over 180 interfaith dialogues and co-founded the Calgary Jewish-Muslim Council. He united Canadian imams to speak out against the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, and against terrorism to Canada and the United States. He also works on the de-radicalization of the youth with RCMP. Imam Sohrawardy is an example of an exceptional individual that makes our nation stronger because of our diversity and not in spite of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, Texas-based oil giant Kinder Morgan wants to build a pipeline from Edmonton to Burnaby in order to export raw, undiluted bitumen to foreign countries. Mr. Speaker, this is a bad idea. British Columbians take all the risk and we don't get any of the reward. Mr. Speaker, Kinder Morgan will pocket at least $5 million a day if this pipeline is built, but all British Columbians are left with is a giant environmental time bomb. Now, this rip-off project is opposed by Premier Christy Clark, it's opposed by John Horgan, it's opposed by Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, and it's opposed by thousands of British Columbians. Now, during the election, the Liberals promised to redo Harper's flawed pipeline review process. They broke their promise, but they can redeem themselves if they reject this pipeline, Harper's pet pipeline project, in December. So since 2011, I've stood with British Columbians against this project, Mr. Speaker, and I'll stand with them again if the Liberals approve this project in December. Mr. Speaker, I urge the Liberals to reject Kinder Morgan and embrace a green energy future.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, for 141 years, Atlantic Canada has maintained representation on the Supreme Court. Every government has respected Atlantic Canadian representation until this government, with its appointment process that does not guarantee Atlantic representation on the court. Just about everyone has criticized this flawed appointment process, except the 32 Liberal MPs from Atlantic Canada who have been absolutely silent when it comes to defending 141 years of Atlantic Canadian representation on the court. For the 32 Liberal MPs from Atlantic Canada, when given the choice between standing behind the Prime Minister or standing up for Atlantic Canada, they chose to stand behind the Prime Minister at the expense of Atlantic Canada. Mr. Speaker, they should be ashamed.
Shame. Burlington.
Speaker, this past Saturday, Halton Women's Place held their 7th annual Hope in High Heels event in my riding of Burlington. Boys and men of all ages from 8 to 82, including our mayor, fire chief, Halton police, labor, business, and sports leaders, my husband and brother, all slipped into a pair of hot pink heels and strutted in solidarity with Halton Women's Place to fight to end violence against women. The message is simple. We will not end violence against women and children if boys and men are not included in the conversation and part of the solution. Thank you to all of the boys and men for their leadership and their positive role modeling to help raise awareness and funds for a heroic organization in my community who provides vital support for our most vulnerable in their time of need. I was thinking, the event was such a success this weekend in Burlington. Maybe we should organize a Hope in High Heels on the Hill. Are you up for it, Mr. Speaker?
Question period starts in a moment, and of course, the Speaker just moderates. He doesn't answer questions. I understand the Minister of Immigration has a point of order. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, no, pardon me. It was done earlier, I understand. Oral questions, questions orales, honorable chef de l'opposition.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is failing when it comes to backing our resource workers and their families. He has been faltering on making decisions on major energy projects, and this has to stop. The Pacific Northwest LNG will provide thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in investment at no cost to taxpayers. Mr. Speaker, these workers and families need the Prime Minister to make a decision. They can't afford to wait any longer. Will the Prime Minister finally make a decision that's in the interests of energy workers?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians elected this government in order to make decisions in the interests of all Canadians, and that's why we're focused on making sure that there is no longer a false choice put forward between being good for the environment and building strong jobs. We're actually going to do them both together on a broad range of projects. That's what Canadians expect, to defend our environment, to create economic growth, and to do that while respecting communities and partnering with Indigenous peoples. That's what Canadians expect of their government. That's exactly what this government is going to do.
Position.
Mr. Speaker, we warned the Prime Minister that his reckless spending and higher taxes would not create jobs. And now this is Canada's new reality. It means less jobs and less economic growth. But there are solutions. We have workers in this country with the skills, the ambition, and the ability to get to work today. But too many projects are stuck waiting for this Prime Minister to make a decision. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing and approve job-creating pipeline projects so we can get our hardest-hit families back to work?
Honourable Prime Minister.
For 10 years, the previous government was unable to approve large projects simply because they didn't have the public confidence. They didn't demonstrate that they understood that building a strong economy requires one to protect the environment at the same time. That is what we are focused on. They also don't understand that the only taxes that we've raised are on the wealthiest 1%, so we could lower them for the middle class. And they voted against it, Mr. Speaker.
Chef de l'opposition.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
To learn details about the Prime Minister's secret negotiations on a cybersecurity agreement with China. Now, let's be clear, the Chinese have hacked into our National Security Council. They've hacked the government's networks thousands of times. Canadian companies are under a constant threat of Chinese hacking to steal their ideas and their intellectual property, and this illegal activity has gone on for decades. How dangerously naive can the Prime Minister be to enter into a cybersecurity agreement with the country that poses the largest cybersecurity threat?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for years, Canadian governments have been bringing up security and rule of law concerns with the Chinese government, but the fact is it's always been done on an ad hoc basis. What we've actually established is an ongoing, rigorous security and rule of law dialogue that will allow us to advance the issues of consular, of cybersecurity, issues that matter to Canadians in a robust way that is going to get results. For too long, the previous government's back and forth dilly-dallying on engagement with China didn't produce the results that Canadians need.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, last month the Immigration Minister said that an extradition treaty with China was off the table because of their human rights record. Then last week, the Prime Minister and the Chinese Premier indicated that they were negotiating an extradition treaty. Then this past weekend, the Foreign Affairs Minister publicly contradicted the Prime Minister and said we would never negotiate an extradition treaty with China. So will the Prime Minister let us know once and for all, is he or anyone in his government negotiating an extradition treaty with China?
Honourable Prime Minister.
As I said a number of times, Mr. Speaker, the previous government had many conversations around issues of extradition, of rule of law, of consular affairs with China, but always on an ad hoc basis. What we've established is a rigorous, security and rule of law dialogue that will allow us to bring up difficult issues and emphasize that Canada has very, very high expectations around rule of law and process around any such thing as extradition, and that is something that Canadians expect us to hold to.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, last week, the Prime Minister and the Chinese Premier confirmed negotiations of an extradition treaty between the two countries. Then the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the number one of Canadian diplomacy, who, let's hope at least, is aware of what's going on, if there are indeed negotiations, contradicted the Prime Minister by saying that we will never negotiate an extradition treaty. Mr. Speaker, who should Canadians believe? The Foreign Affairs Minister or the Prime Minister? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, last week we confirmed that we have established a dialogue on security and law and order to show that we are a government that is ready to work with the Chinese government on issues that concern Canadians, whether that be consular affairs, whether that be human rights. We now have a regular and rigorous way to discuss these important issues, and we will always defend the principles and expectations of Canadians when it comes to extradition treaties. We have extremely high expectations for that. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Mr. Speaker, when the Royals arrived in Canada over the weekend, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "The Great Bear Rainforest is no place for a crude oil pipeline." British Columbians give that a big high five. What he seems unwilling to do is to say whether he thinks the Great Bear Rainforest is a place for a natural gas pipeline. Can he reassure British Columbians on that, or is he just going to leave them hanging?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the previous election, we made a very clear statement that we would both protect the environment and create jobs and prosperity that Canadians expect. It's no longer a question of making a choice on one side or the other. And that's why we're moving forward in a responsible way to analyzing various projects, and we're going to make the decisions in the best interests of all Canadians, whether it's communities, whether it's Indigenous partners, whether it's people concerned about the environment, or indeed people concerned about growth. That's our responsibility, and that's what we're going to live up to.
Member for Outremont.
Speaker, let me read what the current Minister of Public Services said in this House before the election. Quote, "It's not right that throughout our country we're seeing reduced health care funding to the provinces by nearly $36 billion. Now in government, the Liberals have adopted the health care plan of Stephen Harper." Hear that applause? Was this always the Liberal plan? Attack Stephen Harper's policies to get elected, and then once in government, adopt those exact same policies?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal government, we've demonstrated an unprecedented level of cooperation and collaboration with the provinces. Indeed, the previous government refused to talk about health care, refused to work on this important issue to Canadians with the partners in the provinces, and that's exactly what we're doing. The Health Minister is engaged with her counterparts across the country. We are working to respond to Canadians' desire to have a health system that works and that keeps us all healthy.
Come on. The honourable member for Outremont. Well, Mr. Speaker, last week the Liberal government adopted Stephen Harper's pitiful climate change targets. This week, it's adopting Stephen Harper's cuts to health care. And that, even if the Minister of Foreign Affairs said before the election that the Conservative government had unilaterally refused to extend the funding agreement with the provinces and found that deplorable. Is that what the Prime Minister meant when he promised real change? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Real change is, for the first time since 10 years, the federal government is working with the provinces. We are committed to discussing how to create a healthcare system that reaches the expectations of Canadians. We are listening to Canadians who want a better healthcare system. We will work with the provinces in respect and partnership to deliver a better healthcare system for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
And the Prime Minister's words simply don't match reality. He said that last October 19th marked the start of a new era in labour relations with the federal government. But Canadian workers need more than words. They need a government that provides real support for labour rights.
Hear, hear.
If the Prime Minister truly believes in the right of collective bargaining, can he tell us if he will support our legislation banning the use of scabs once and for all? Question claire pour le Premier Ministre.
A clear question for the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. Will the Liberals vote for or against our anti-scab law? Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We were elected on a platform of creating growth and strength for the middle class in this country, and we know that Labour is an essential partner in creating that economic growth. We are focused on growing the economy in ways that support middle-class families and those working hard to join the middle class, and that's why our close working relationship with organised labour, like our close working relationship with business leaders, like our good working relationship with the provinces, we believe in collaboration and respect to make sure that growth for the economy helps the middle class.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, it's clear that the main concern of Canadians is jobs. Jobs that we can create by exporting and jobs that we can make by making decisions, particularly when it comes to negotiating a new softwood lumber agreement with the Americans. The former Liberal government abandoned the forestry sector 10 years ago. October 12th is coming up very quickly, Mr. Speaker, and I hope we're going to see an agreement with the United States so we can export our wood so that we won't have to go to court. Will the Prime Minister commit to the forestry sector to get an agreement? The Honourable Minister of International Trade. The last accord expired under the previous government, as the official opposition knows very well. As government, we have committed to negotiations, and I was very happy to hear in committee that the member for Caribou Prince George appreciates our work. He recently said, "I recognize Foreign Affairs Canada and their minister for the impressive work that has been done on this. We are seeking a good agreement for Canadians, not just any agreement." The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's important that we see results. the government can have consultation after consultation. They can travel around the country, but when there's no results, Mr. Speaker, well, people are judged more on what they do than what they say. And for the moment, there are no results. The agreement ended last year. There's a one-year grace period. We were hoping we'd see an agreement signed quickly. When we will have an agreement, tell us when, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister. I repeat, the previous agreement expired under the previous government, and I quote, leaders in Quebec have said that they are very happy with the defense that we are providing for the forestry sector in Quebec. The Quebec Forestry Sector Industrial Organization is very happy with the position taken for Quebec. It's just the opposition who doesn't recognize the work that we are doing to protect Quebec and Canadian workers.
Bruce Gray, Owen Sound.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've always took pride in my math, and it's always been pretty good. But I'll tell you, I've been racking my brain trying to think of how is possible at all for someone to rack up more than $120,000 in moving expenses to move down the 401 from Toronto to Ottawa, even if the Prime Minister's office moved their staff by dog sled and pack mule. And if I use liberal mathematics, I still can't come up with a $126,000 cost. Will the Prime Minister please stand up and explain to this House why it costs so much to move one of his staff 450 kilometers down the 401?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I've said in this House time and time again, that this relocation policy has been in place since the 1970s. And this policy was last updated under the previous government. We've also heard how Stephen Harper's office, when he was Prime Minister, approved over $300,000 in relocation expenses, included one for $93,000. Our government recognizes that more can be done, and that's why our Prime Minister has asked the Treasury Board to revisit the relocation policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bruce Gray, Owen Sound.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if I had any hair with an answer like that, I'd pull the rest of it out. But if I'd have known that a U-Haul was this expensive, Mr. Speaker, I would have offered to take a load of stuff for Jerry and my Ford F-150. Now, the fact is, Mr. Speaker, this is classical liberal entitlement. The government keeps repeating that these were policies that have been in place for years. But I can tell you that is true. This government, or no government before this government, has ever abused this policy. Will the Prime Minister come clean and admit that the $1 million move was way out of line?
Honourable Government House Leader.
In this House have heard what I have to say, and yes, I've repeated it several times so that we can remember that the former Prime Minister, Stephen Harper's office, also approved $300,000 in relocation expenses, including one of $93,000 for a single individual. But more importantly, why don't we share what Guy Jorno, former Chief of Staff to Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, had to say? He said, "The federal relocation program, which applies to hundreds of moves annually, including moves by employees of government, military and RCMP, exists for a very good reason. Our government is committed to reviewing the policy."
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, for days the Liberals have defended personalised cash payouts for the Prime Minister's best friends. On Friday, after being caught, they said the expenses were unreasonable because they had no justification or receipts. Wow. The Prime Minister's poor judgment allowed him to sign off on something his friends now call unreasonable. So once again, what exactly are personalised cash payouts?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the policy that the member is referring to has existed since the 1970s. The previous government had no problem approving it, and just as recently in 2011, the previous government had no problem approving $300,000 in relocation expenses, including one for $93,000. But let's go back to Guy Jorno, former Chief of Staff to Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and he had to ask, do we want a fair and independent determination based on consistent rules, or do we want Honourable Member for Saskatoon University to impose his arbitrary and personal opinions on people in a situation?
Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's clear the Liberal House Leader only knows her approved talking points. Yeah, ironically, they were probably written by the staff she forked all the money over to. Approved personalised cash cash payouts for moving expenses must be accounted for. We have no answers. Why do Liberals only believe these expenses were unreasonable once caught?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker, and it definitely means a lot coming from the member reading her question. So I will remind members in this House that this policy has existed since the 1970s. I will remind members in this House that this government recognizes that this policy needs to be reviewed, and that's why our Prime Minister has asked the Treasury Board to review the relocation policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi, Bay James Nunavik EU. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister made a solemn promise of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, but his Minister of Justice keeps breaking those promises. Court cases against residential school survivors are piling up in her department, and she's contesting a court decision which found that there was a perverse application of justice against a survivor. Can the minister tell us why she is acting against her government's promise of reconciliation by continuing to fight residential school survivors in court? Honourable Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, the government has committed to ensure that justice is accessible to the victims of this dark chapter of our history, and whether that be through the compensation to which they have a right. We are very concerned by the possibility that certain victims with right to who have a right to compensation were refused, and I have asked my department to explore avenues to ensure that this situation is rectified. Justice must be accorded.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Ontario Superior Court has ordered immediate compensation for a residential school survivor who suffered a, quote, perverse miscarriage of justice under the IAP. It was a brutal case. So for what possible reason would the Justice Minister send her lawyers to try and have that case overthrown? The Prime Minister promised survivors that he would end these tactics, but whether it's supporting Site C or fighting residential school survivors, will the Prime Minister tell this House why his Justice Minister is still using the discredited Stephen Harper playbook to impede Indigenous rights in court?
Hear, hear.
Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, it is extraordinarily important to us as a government that all of people who may have not been able to win their case in court, that be reviewed. We have to look at it. I've instructed my department to look at it, and we will make sure that justice is done.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today another member of the Prime Minister's cabinet had to stand in the House of Commons and admit that he personally signed off and submitted false information to parliamentarians. And once again, this confession only came after the Liberals got caught. And when it comes to transparency, Mr. Speaker, the buck stops with the Prime Minister.
It should.
Parliamentarians, on behalf of Canadians they represent, shouldn't have to rely on access to information requests to uncover the truth. So, will the Prime Minister stand and apologize to Canadians for letting his cabinet hide information from them?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment to Canadians to be open and transparent, and these expenses were entered under proactive disclosure 9 months ago, but it turns out they were entered under the wrong column. I realized this earlier today, and immediately, just over an hour ago, I recorded this point in the House of Commons, and I will be resubmitting the answer to the order paper question as soon as possible, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, that was interesting. Mr. Speaker, the Health Minister signed off on an official response to Parliament stating that she hadn't expensed any charges for limos, but we found out she actually charged thousands of dollars for that very thing. The Natural Resources Minister did the same exact thing. Now we've got the Immigration Minister hiding moving expenses in an official response to Parliament. Can the Prime Minister stand up and explain to Canadians, if his ministry is hiding all of these things, why Canadians should believe anything that his government says?
Good question.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. What Canadians know is that the previous government did not do the work that they were elected to do. This government recognizes that these policies can be improved. Members on this side of the House have recognized where improvements can be made, and the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship stood in this House and corrected the record. It's something that the previous government would not know much of. But when it comes to correcting order paper questions, the previous government did it more than 10 times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Red Deer Lacombe.
So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 19 ministers and the Prime Minister, and that's more than half of them, signed off on outrageous relocation costs for a handful of their friends. It wasn't until they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar that they claimed these so-called relocation costs were unreasonable and agreed to pay some of the money back. So, Mr. Speaker, if these expenses are unreasonable and wrong today, then why did they accept the personalized cash payments in the first place?
Hear, hear. Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this policy has been in place since the 1970s. This policy was last updated under the Harper Conservatives in 2008. It was revisited in 2011. They chose to do nothing. What this government recognizes is that more can be done. This government recognizes that we need to review the policy, and that's why our Prime Minister has asked the Secretary of the Treasury Board to review the policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's not good enough that the government House Leader keeps hiding behind the rules, saying that the rules were followed. She's misleading Canadians. The rules clearly state that these expenses are at the discretion of the Minister and the Prime Minister. The rules didn't make them do it. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister hiding behind the rules instead of admitting he used poor judgment when he signed off on these unreasonable personal cash payments?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it's best to go once again to Guy Giorno, former Chief of Staff of Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper. What did he say when it came in regards to this policy? He said, the federal relocation program, which applies to hundreds of moves annually, including moves by employees of government, military, and RCMP, exists for a very good reason. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Esquimalt, Saanich-Sooke.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians still overwhelmingly oppose Bill C-51, and the Liberals promised a major rollback, even though they voted for this Conservative legislation. Yesterday, I introduced a bill which would repeal each and every section of Bill C-51. So if the Liberals want to keep any part of that bill, I invite them to make their case here in the House. However, today, the Privacy Commissioner criticized this government for not doing enough to review the impacts of C-51 on democratic and privacy rights. So my question to the Minister is, will the Liberal government implement all of the Privacy Commissioner's recommendations, or will they support my bill to repeal C-51?
Minister of Public Safety.
Speaker, on Bill C-51, I assure the honourable gentleman that the government will in fact implement exactly what was in our policy platform at the time of the last election. With respect to the Privacy Commissioner, I consider him to be an exceedingly important parliamentary watchdog. His views matter. I welcome his scrutiny on specific issues, and I am very pleased to have him vigorously engaged in consultations about the very best possible national security framework for Canada. His advice will be invaluable.
The honourable member for Beloeil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, today the Privacy Commissioner criticized the government because its consultations on C-51 don't take into account how the bill impacts on democratic rights and privacy. He says, quote, the scope of these consultations is too narrow. They don't appear to be looking at key privacy concerns, unquote. Will the minister finally acknowledge the government's inaction and the public's concerns about privacy and repeal C-51 at last? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
For our national security, we will provide new scrutiny by a committee of parliamentarians, plus a new office for community outreach and counter-radicalization, plus faithful compliance with the Charter, plus more specific definitions of propaganda, plus repairs to the no-fly list, plus protection for the right to protest, plus a statutory review after 3 years, and for the first time, Canadians are being thoroughly consulted about what other steps are necessary to keep Canadians safe and to safeguard their rights and freedoms.
The honourable member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, this government has taken concrete steps to help communities fight homelessness. Budget 2016 boosted funding for the Homelessness Partnering Strategy, the first increase since 1999. Can the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development update the House on additional measures that are taken to help tackle homelessness? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Châteauguay-Lacolle for her support in fighting homelessness. Our government has committed to support innovative approaches in our communities to help alleviate homelessness. Yesterday, I announced a $2.5 million announcement, new money to encourage people to be more innovative, particularly for Aboriginals, young people, women fleeing violence, and veterans. I'd like to thank the member again for her interest and support for this important issue.
Well, Mr. Speaker, during the last election, the Prime Minister promised that he would usher in a new era of collaboration with the provinces and territories. Yet the Minister of Environment recently confirmed that she plans to impose a massive carbon tax grab on the provinces, whether they like it or not. So much for cooperative federalism and so much for those sunny ways. Can the Minister tell us exactly which provinces and territories have agreed to her plan to increase the tax burden on Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Environment.
Mr. Speaker, we're working very actively with the provinces and territorial governments to implement the commitments that were made in the Vancouver Declaration agreed to by all premiers, which includes a price on carbon. We understand very much that unique circumstances exist in some of the provinces and territories, and we're working to find solutions to meet their individual needs. We know that a broad-based price on carbon is very important to reducing emissions, but it's also important that each province and territory have flexibility.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Vancouver Accord did nothing of the sort, because we now know that the three premiers of our northern territories, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall, and even Premier McNeil of Nova Scotia have all said that they oppose the imposition of a federal carbon tax on their provinces. Yet the Environment Minister continues her threat to force a harmful carbon tax grab on all of the provinces and territories, betraying the Prime Minister's promise to work collaboratively with the provinces. So, again to the Minister, why has she broken that promise, and what happened to the new era of cooperative federalism?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
We know that in order to build a strong economy, we have to be serious about protecting the environment, and a price on carbon is part of that. It will help us to reduce our emissions, foster innovation, and give businesses the certainty that they need to plan. We are working actively with all of the provinces as we approach the development of the Pan-Canadian framework, but I would, in this regard, note the statement made by the Premier of British Columbia yesterday that, quote, "I want to be clear that British Columbia remains committed to a Pan-Canadian carbon pricing framework. British Columbia has established a $30 ton broad-based carbon tax and consistently challenged others to join us. We are encouraged to have a federal partner in advancing carbon pricing across Canada."
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, we have a job crisis here in Canada. In Western Canada, over 125,000 energy workers have lost their jobs, thanks in great part to this Liberal government's anti-energy policies. Canada is unable to get top dollar for their energy products because our oil is landlocked. Tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. When will the Liberals start growing Canada's economy by creating jobs, employing the middle class, and helping Canada's energy sector get our products to new international markets?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the core responsibilities of any government is to help to get our natural resources to market, but in a sustainable fashion. And the only way that we can do that is to restore public trust in the way that we evaluate major projects. This government introduced the interim principles as a first step to addressing some of the concerns that exist. We have now launched an environmental assessment review, which will go through the process of revitalizing our environmental assessments, and we are about to embark upon a modernization of the National Energy Board. We are going to continue to ensure that these processes carry the confidence of Canadians going forward so that we can get our resources to market in a sustainable way.
For Battle River Crowfoot.
Well, Mr. Speaker, workers are losing their jobs. Governments are losing revenue. The middle class is hurt by the downstream economic effects from the loss of energy markets, and he's going to undertake another study. Mr. Speaker, no matter what part of Canada we live in, we have a stake in ensuring Canada has the energy infrastructure in place to access new international markets. When will the Liberals approve pipelines and get Canada's energy to new emerging international markets?
The The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, for 10 years under the previous administration, not 1 kilometre of pipeline was built to Tidewater. And the reason was because they undermined the integrity of the environmental assessment process and the National Energy Board process. We intend to re-establish the confidence of Canadians in these processes to ensure that we can get our resources to market in a sustainable way.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, today the Military Ombudsman released a report warning that the application process for injured veterans is broken, complex, and difficult to navigate. And injured Canadian Armed Forces members will not automatically get the new benefits, but will have to apply through what the Ombudsman described as a dizzying process. Veterans have already waited far too long for their benefits. Will the minister proactively reach out to injured servicemen and women to ensure they get the higher benefits promised by the Liberals?
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for her question. In fact, I want to thank each and every member of the Canadian Armed Forces and veterans in this country who have supported this nation for a long, long time. I know we are working actively towards getting veterans the benefits they need for financial security, for employment, for other retraining initiatives. And at the core of my mission is assisting that transition. We're working hard to do so with the Minister of National Defence, as well as ensuring that as many veterans as possible can receive the benefits that are due and owing to them for their service.
Honourable Member for Jonquière. The Liberals promised to improve relations with our veterans, Mr. Speaker, but in his report released today, the Military Ombudsman revealed that the current benefits system just isn't working and it's too complex to navigate. That's totally unacceptable. Veterans are already waiting far too long for the benefits they're entitled to, but this government keeps making life difficult for them. Will the minister right this wrong so our veterans can make a smoother transition to civilian life?
The Minister of Veterans Affairs.
We were elected on a commitment to do things better for our veterans and their families, and I was given an aggressive mandate from our Prime Minister to do just that. Included that is working on our transition for all members leaving the Canadian Armed Forces, and our department's job is to assist them in getting to a better place. I know I'm working very hard with the Minister of National Defence to reduce complexity, overhaul the system of service delivery, and strengthen partnerships between Veterans Affairs Canada and National Defence. We're making progress in that front and we'll continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals have told us how wonderful it is for Atlantic Canadians to have a representative from Mississauga in charge of ACOA, and how grateful they should be that some applicants from Atlantic Canada are being considered for the Supreme Court. And I'm sure for the Liberals that is a beautiful thing. But here's what they don't get, Mr. Speaker. It's not just their right to apply. These seats belong to Atlantic Canada. Why would the Prime Minister even consider taking away Atlantic Canada's only seat on the Supreme Court? That's what I want to know.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, the process used by the previous government to appoint Supreme Court justices was opaque, outdated, and in need of an overhaul. We've announced a new appointment process that's open, transparent, and will set a much higher standard for accountability. As mandated by our Prime Minister, the list of qualified and functionally bilingual candidates developed by the Advisory Board includes candidates from Atlantic Canada. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased with the newfound interest in Atlantic Canada expressed by the member from Niagara Falls.
For Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, there has been a representative from Atlantic Canada on the Supreme Court for over 140 years, and I cannot believe that all 32 Atlantic Canadian Liberal MPs are smiling at how wonderful this is, that this seat could be taken away from Atlantic Canada. So I just want to ask the Minister of Justice, how many of these 32 MPs have approached her to tell her what an outstanding idea they think this is?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we
won't take any advice from the Conservatives on appointment processes. It was under the Conservatives that their Minister of Justice, in fact, for 6 of the 9 appointments for justices in Nova Scotia, appointed his friends. In fact, he appointed the best man from his wedding to the bench. He appointed his best man's wife to the bench, and if the Conservatives hadn't been turfed out in the last election, they might have appointed his entire wedding party to the bench, Mr. Speaker. The fact is that Atlantic Canadians deserve better than that, and we're giving.
Honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice has said that the government will support our Conservative opposition motion calling on the government to respect Atlantic Canadian representation on the Supreme Court. But the Minister has refused to actually confirm that the government will appoint an Atlantic Canadian. So, will the Minister confirm that the government will appoint an Atlantic Canadian to fill the vacancy of Justice Cromwell, or is this just another example of Liberals saying one thing and doing another?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the decisions taken by the Supreme Court affect us all, but the process that was employed by the previous government was opaque, outdated, and in need of an overhaul. And that's why our government has announced a new Supreme Court of Canada appointment process that's open and transparent. And under this process, the advisory board will identify suitable candidates who will be jurists of the highest caliber, they will be functionally bilingual, and they will be representative of the diversity of our great country. And I'm pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that that list contains candidates from Atlantic Canada, and we can certainly compete.
The honourable member for Glengarry, Prescott Russell.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday morning I had the pleasure of attending an announcement by the Finance Minister at Ottawa's Cité Collégiale. He announced the launch of pre-budget consultations, this time for Budget 2017, his second budget. I'd like to know whether the Minister could share any of his objectives with the House. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Glengarry, Prescott Russell, for his excellent question. Yesterday, we announced the launch of pre-budget consultations for Budget 2017. Last year, we had more than 250,000 interactions with Canadians to get their ideas for the budget. The consultations were a huge success, and we're hoping to get even more suggestions this year. Those interested in participating can do so by filling out a questionnaire on the website of Finance Canada. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, I also have an excellent question. Mr. Speaker, the National Optical Institute, which is a world leader in Quebec City, is helping lots of entrepreneurs succeed, and there are other centres in Ontario and Alberta. There was a call for support today, but there's radio silence. The government has not responded to the call from this organization. Could the Prime Minister at least allow for something to be done for this institution that is in his own riding? The Honourable Minister.
Member opposite for the question. As the member opposite knows, we're very much engaged with the Institute. We've heard their funding request. As we do with all requests, we base it on merit, and we look at the best possible outcomes to commercialize these ideas, to help make sure we help small businesses and grow the economy. This is a great initiative, and we look forward to supporting it, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Mr. Speaker, to strip someone of their Canadian citizenship is a very serious matter. Stephen Harper's Bill C-24 took away due process for Canadians, even in the case of an honest mistake. The Liberals promised a full repeal of Bill C-24, but so far they have failed to deliver. In fact, the government is aggressively pursuing citizenship revocation for up to 60 Canadians every month. When will the minister fix Bill C-24, and will he halt citizenship revocation until fairness has been restored?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, C6 adheres to our fundamental election commitment that a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, and it revokes citizenship revocation for criminal acts applied to dual citizens alone. That was the central focus of the bill. It has now passed through the House of Commons and will be considered in the Senate. Citizenship revocation for misrepresentation is under consideration, and we are considering further lines of appeal.
Member for York South-Weston.
Speaker, the 5th Replenishment Conference of the Global Fund was recently held in Montreal. Canada generously pledged $800 million from 2017 to 2019 to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Will the Minister of International Development update this House on the leadership role played by Canada and on the progress made at this conference to eradicate these 3 terrible diseases that have claimed so many lives? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague from York South-Weston for his question. Our government has once again showed leadership. The Replenishment Conference hosted in Montreal raised close to $13 billion in pledges to eradicate HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. We are proud of our pledge of over $800 million. It will help save an additional 8 million lives. Thank you.
Member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this week, when caught misusing taxpayers' dollars, the Prime Minister's friends, Jerry and Katie, said that when they reviewed their expenses, they found that there were some that were unreasonable. Now, the government continued to say that they were following the rules and they were forced to make these payouts because of the rules, but in fact, the Senior Vice President of Brookfield Global Relations says just minutes ago that they were not forced to do this. As a matter of fact, they would have been briefed on the exact expenses that they themselves were claiming. And so, Mr. Speaker, the question is, did Jerry and Katie believe that these expenses were unreasonable when they claimed them, or only when they got caught?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to answer the member's question, and I will quote once again from Guy Joyner, former Chief of Staff to Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He says, the relocation process is run by an independent third party. The third party determines the actual cost according to the program criteria. So there's a reason the system has an independent third party decide on actual costs and apply the rules fairly and consistently to everyone. Do we want a fair and independent determination based on consistent rules, or do we want an honourable member for Saskatoon University to impose his arbitrary and personal opinion on the situation?
The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, in a letter to Philippe Couillard on August 21st, 2015, the Prime Minister wrote, "Unlike Mr. Harper, I do not intend to deal with the issue of transfers unilaterally." He added, "My party is aware of the challenges of rising health care costs." Really? The Liberals have actually managed to do even worse than the Harper government. It's Harper with strings attached. How can the Prime Minister justify his broken promise to the Quebec Premier and his unilateral cuts to health care for Quebec patients? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are proud of their public health care system. They expect their government to ensure that the system will always be there for them. Canadian health transfers amount to over $36 billion this year, and next year they will go up by over $1 billion. In other words, more than $37 billion. I consult with my provincial and territorial colleagues, and will be doing so in the weeks to come, and I'm really looking forward to that meeting. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, the axe has fallen. The Health Minister has decided to cut health transfers the Liberal way, unilaterally. That's a really nice way to cooperate with her counterparts. This is a direct attack on Quebec's healthcare system. Less money for nurses and doctors, for care, for operations. Why are the 40 Liberals from Quebec so quietly standing by while the government runs roughshod over the Quebec healthcare system? The Honourable Health Minister.
We are not cutting health transfers. We had the biggest transfer ever this year, more than $36 billion. Next year it's going to be even bigger than that, more than $37 billion. We're interested in collaborating and working with our colleagues in the provinces and territories who are doing such a good job to deliver care. We want to invest in areas where we have agreed upon priorities, including increased investments in home care. Thank you.
It being 3:05 p.m., pursuant to order made on Thursday, September 22, 2016, the House will now proceed. Point of order, the Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, during question period, I quoted a document from Guy Joyner, former Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Stephen Harper, where he offered a spirited defense of the government relocation policy. I would like to table this important document in both official languages for the benefit of all members.
There appears to be no unanimous consent to table the document. Comme il est, excuse me, of course the minister can table anything they want, so the minister can table the document. Comme il est 15 heures.
It being 3:05 p.m., pursuant to order adopted on Thursday, September 22nd, 2016, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Nicholson relating to the business of supply. Call in the members.